So here we are in chapter 2. And so this first section is about the wedding in Cana, which is a place. And so Jesus is invited to basically a family wedding. And in the wedding, kind of they run out of wine. Now in kind of traditional times, it's like to run out of wine or to run out of food was like a huge shame on the family, really. So it was a massive issue. It wasn't just a case of, we need a bit more wine. It wasn't just like someone could pop down the shop and buy some more. It was a really big deal. And so Jesus' mother was there, this is Mary, and she has faith in Jesus. And so she says to the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. And so Jesus kind of almost reluctantly agrees to sort of do this miracle. Almost he's not quite ready yet. He doesn't necessarily want to kind of start doing his kind of miracles yet, but he does it because his mum asks. How many of us do stuff because our mum asks us to do stuff? And so he does. And then there's this amazing miracle where he basically turns water into wine. And it's not just any old wine. It says, even people who didn't know that the miracle had been done, and they said everyone serves the good wine first, and when people are a bit drunk, a bit tipsy, then you bring out the cheap wine. But Jesus' kind of miracle wine was so good that, it was the best wine that people have ever tasted almost. And so this was Jesus' first recorded miracle. And there's kind of something about Jesus' first miracle, right? I mean, just if you're going to do your first ever miracle, maybe what you want to do is raise someone from the dead, or, maybe you want to kind of, heal someone who's really sick. But Jesus' first miracle is a wedding. It's a picture of joy, a picture of happiness. It's a picture of celebration. And Jesus wants people to enjoy themselves and to be happy and celebrate. And there's often kind of a lot of significance that is attached to that. And then we move on to the next little story in this passage where Jesus goes into the temple. Now, bear in mind, the temple was it was a big place. It would have been where all the kind of religious people were. It was where God was meant to kind of dwell in the holy place, and we can talk about that some other time. But instead of it being a kind of a place of worship, it had become essentially a little bit like a kind of a cheap market bazaar, and there were lots of kind of people making money off genuine religious kind of people who wanted to worship. So in order to worship, you often had to bring something to sacrifice. So you would have brought, your ox or your sheep or your pigeon, something like that. And then people would say, right, okay, there's a temple kind of money. So a bit like you have to have a special currency. So you bring your thing and then, we take your money kind of thing. And so, but instead of kind of charging a fair price, they were essentially extorting people because it was like a monopoly. It was like the only place you could do this stuff was in the temple, and they'd make money out of you. And so Jesus gets really angry. So you go from Jesus, who sort of does this amazing miracle, kind of turning water into wine, to suddenly making a whip of cords, right, and literally kind of turning over the tables, charging, flicking his whip around and charging people out, and getting really angry about people. And the reason he's so angry, he's saying, my Father's house is meant to be a house of prayer. It's meant to be a place of worship. And instead, you've turned it into a house of just trade. It's a worldly place. It's not the right thing anymore. And so then kind of he kind of all the way through the book of John, Jesus knows he's going to die, right? So in chapter 2, we've only just got started in the story of Jesus. Jesus knows that he's come to die to take away the sins of the world, and he knows this, and that's maybe that's why he didn't want, when it says at the beginning of this chapter, and it says, my hour has not yet come. Maybe that's why he was like, I don't want to start this, because I know that once my time comes, my life's going to get difficult and I'm going to die, right? But at the end here, you see this kind of little verse here, which is, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. And so the Jews don't get it. They're like, how can you, this temple took 46 years to build. How are you going to knock it down and rebuild it in 3 days? But he's not talking about the temple of worship in the traditional physical sense. He's saying the temple, that his body is a temple. And so that's going to die, and in 3 days he's going to be raised up again. So he's already kind of pointing forward. You see these kind of things pointing forward towards his death and then his resurrection. So Jesus knew that was coming. But yeah, so interesting stuff. Hopefully you found it helpful.